I'm here to propose and certainly present to the board. And I give you a little bit of quick history here before we get into the slide presentation. Certainly I met with the board privately over the last month or so, just kind of letting them know what we were talking about and looking to propose. And really almost right on the heels of the Florida school shooting, I went down to see Dr. Marquardt, and I'll get into our relationship with the school here in a little bit, but went down to see him with a proposal to put a school resource officer back in play in our school district. Years ago, everybody might remember Ronnie Curcioli, who, God bless him, knew every person that left that school building and went in that thing, but a lot has happened certainly since then, where the school resource officer is just not that security guard that sits there. And lo and behold, with some changes, one thing or another, the conversation was well received at the school. So much so is that it really started to pick up momentum. And so really what we're looking to do is propose a full-time school resource officer within the West Geauga School District, which would start in the fall at the start of the new school year. I can't take all credit for the presentation that we'll move through here, but there's a lot of information in it. And I asked Dr. Marquardt here, Chief Carroll here, and Sarah LaTourette here, because they're very instrumental, and you'll understand why. Because West Geauga schools are really Russell Township and Chester Township coming together. If something's happened at the school, we're all involved in our meetings and stuff, and I'll get into that in a minute, because I'll ask those gentlemen to say a couple of words. So with that, Craig, we can move right into the second one. So really what I wanted to get into, use a lot of the information that they provide at the state level with the Ohio School Resource Officers Association, is that SRO history really started in 1950s. You'll see it there in Flint, Michigan. And as we got into 67 and 69 into 70, really how it started to change. But school resource officers are not new. They're just more frequent now, right? But it goes all the way back to 1950. Go ahead, Craig. So the history of school shootings. So the first recorded school incident in history was actually July 26, 1764. So it's not new. And when we look, Chardon High School already February 27th of 12. Right, so we're already 6 years past. Since that date, there's been 130 school-related shootings at colleges and high schools across the country. 12 reported incidents just this year alone, and obviously most recently in Great Mills, Maryland, on March 20th. So we see the frequency and the volume by which these are happening. So, go ahead, Craig. What I did here is we looked at the call volume and these are not visits. These are not stopping by teaching. These are actual calls for service that are happening, right? And this is 5-year collection of it, right? So over a 5-year period, we're at the high school 317 times, right? And on down the line, you'll see, down to Hawk and 114, all the way down to St. Anselm. So those are actual calls where even Westwood, you'll see there with Russell 139 times. Those are calls for service. So I wanted you to see the frequency by which officers are going there, taking reports, helping, whatever that case might be. But those are actual needs that are happening today. Okay, Greg, go ahead. So how's our current relationship with the police department? I got to tell you, when I first started, the relationship with the school years ago is nothing like it is now. I talked to Dr. Marquardt sometimes multiple times in a week. It's probably the number one question I get asked by the community is, how is our relationship with the schools? It is perfect. Tim and I are welcome in all the schools, all of our people. It has gone from, why is that police officer sitting outside? Oh my God, what happened? To, oh God, thank God you're here. We love it. I see you sitting in the parking lot every day. We're doing the best we can with 7 schools between Tim and I, because, you saw the list of them there before, and you add Metzabom to that, and we have 7 schools that we're responding to and helping with. So we couldn't enjoy a better relationship. The school is instrumental instead of, we meet sometimes quarterly, at least 3 times a year. All the administrators from every school come together, meet at the middle school. We sit at a table, the fire departments are there from both communities, police department, the sheriff's there. And instead of meeting individually and trying to make changes in each building, we do it collectively. We all talk about the good and the bad and the changes we need to make. And this has been going on for a while, so this isn't something new. what we're looking to do is add to what we're already doing. So, go ahead, Craig. So, student crime causes, you can read the list there. I won't read it to you, but you can see really, why student crime, different things that impact it, and what might, facilitate a need for a school resource officer. The law enforcement officer, as I said, is not to be in the building as a security guard wanting people. That's not what we're trying to do. He's a law enforcement officer. He's an educator. So he's going to be in classes teaching. Maybe it's about internet safety and social media. Maybe it's about the victims of sexting. It's bullying. There's just a myriad of topics. Current events, the criminal justice classes, whatever's going on. He's an educator and he's a counselor, right? This is another person for them to go to and help the school with our children while they're there. So, go ahead. So, why the law enforcement officer? Again, obviously credible form of authority. He has full arrest powers. He's a deterrent just by being there, right? If someone knows he's there, safety and security, and obviously investigates the different events that may happen there. So he becomes the primary contact for juvenile offenders and victims, developing information for the police departments, individual police services, truancy, and crime prevention. The campus is basically this officer's beat. So what this means for us is that this officer, if school's in session, there's an officer there. We're proposing that he can't take time off in the middle of the year the same way Dr. Marquardt's staff cannot, right? Which means you're on holiday when the school's on holiday. You take vacation when the school's not in session. But if school's in session, that officer needs to be there. If that officer were to call off sick, then it's my responsibility to make sure we are putting an officer in the building that day. Meaning it's no different than our minimum road coverage. It means we're going to make sure that someone's there. So the high school becomes that primary responsibility, and all of the other buildings become his. But maybe he's the face that's going to go into Westwood or go into Lindsay or go into St. Anselm's. But maybe one of our part-time officers is now going to backfill so that there's always a body inside the high school while because we want our younger children to get to know who that officer is. By the time they get to high school, they already know that's Officer Bob or whoever that is, right? They're building relationships with him. So he's going to educate. He's going to educate the faculty and staff on legal issues, police procedures, and crime prevention as well. So it's not just the students. Go ahead. Again, additional for faculty, classroom presentations, the emergency response, our drills, current trends, and different community issues. He's going to educate the students. So the role of the law enforcement officer, police procedures, criminal law, juvenile laws, personal and school safety issues, and citizenship issues. Educate the parents. So this is, you may be there in the evenings. Maybe it's an open house for incoming freshmen, one thing or another, but same thing, same topics, but now letting the parents know who he is and getting to know them so they can reach out to him directly. And then educate the community, and they're not here, but I wanted to mention Carol and Dell, because this is something that the two of them have been talking to me about for 6 months and really wanting to educate the public on how we're working with the school and how the school works for us and all the things that we're doing to help the schools so that the community knows. And so they started talking to me about this 6 months ago, and this is really that. It's educating the community on what that officer is doing up there, how he's helping our kids, and so on and so forth. So I wanted to mention those two when we brought this slide up. Again, the counselor part of his job: intervention, sounding board, listener, establishing rapport with the kids, identifying and clarifying problems and situations with whether it's personal, family, or peers. Bridging the gap between the police department, the police officers, and the kids. Again, we want to make ourselves approachable to all the kids, not putting up walls. I think we're doing that now as it is, but we can obviously do much better. We want to increase positive attitude towards law enforcement and obviously reduce juvenile crime through counseling, teaching, and a personal interest. And we want that officer in that building for Dr. Marquardt and all his staff to act as a positive role model and liaison. Visible and accessible. This means, our resource officer is not drinking coffee with the janitor somewhere or whatever. This is out front, a part of everyday's activities, interacting obviously positively with the school kids, participating in school functions, and maintaining the relationships with the parents and the administration. So real quickly, I'm not going to read all those. There's a school resource officer training, and I'm going to let Sarah touch on that here in a minute. And this is really required for an officer to go into a building. And these are the topics over 5 days that they're trained in. So it isn't like, hey, I want to be a school resource officer, put me in the building, and I really don't know what I'm supposed to do. In addition to being an ALICE instructor and the various different things and working on the plants, these are the things that they're trained in. So by the time they get into the school, they can start having plans developed and taking an active role in the school. So I just wanted to mention that. Current issues, critical incident safety plans. This is something that all of us do in every community all the time. And when we get them, we're revamping them. And I think at the school, we're preparing to redo them again and sending them into the state. And it just causes us to all learn from things that are happening, refocus on different things. So those are constants. And then computer crimes and tobacco issues. And you can see the list there. Family violence, gun violence. There's a lot of issues that are on kids' minds. And certainly this officer is going to be instrumental in teaching this. So here's where I'm going to introduce Sarah. And my timing really of talking to Dr. Mark Ward about this was really good because I tripped over House Bill 318, started reading it, and I'm like, we are right there with what she and other members of the Ohio representatives have. I'll let her talk about it actually, so I won't ruin all that. But you know, our timing to be right where we're at with her is perfect. So Sarah, if you don't mind, take a couple minutes.
I will be as quick as I can, because I'm sure you guys want to keep going. But thank you for the invitation to be here. So I'm carrying House Bill 318, which we just passed through the House yesterday, so this really is great timing. They passed it through almost unanimously, one no vote, which we won't talk about. But I introduced this bill with John Patterson, and we introduced it because you're probably familiar with Coach Frank Hall from Chardon. He came to us, and he feels very passionate, his foundation feels passionate, that we put a school resource officer in every building in the state of Ohio. That's not something the state can afford to do right now, but we do need to start to find a way to help school districts accomplish this, because more school districts are moving in this direction. We've realized the need is there, the desire is there, and so what could we do as a state to really help school districts attain this? And so we came up with House Bill 318, which when we originally introduced it, did two main things. It defined what a school resource officer is. Right now in the state of Ohio, there is no definition in Ohio Revised Code. That's a problem. If you want to put someone in that position and you want to fund it eventually, we can't do that unless we define it. So we define what it is. And then in addition to that, we're mandating 40 hours of training. And so the training that the chief described, that's actually not mandatory here in the state of Ohio. Most go through it, but they do not have to go through it. And so we felt very strongly that if you're going to call yourself a school resource officer, you need to go through that training. It's very school specific. It's specific to a school setting. And so it's a great training program that individuals are already going through, but now we are requiring that if you're going to call yourself a school resource officer, you go through this training. So I was thrilled with just that. We passed it through Education Committee unanimously. I was happy. We were on our way to passing it off the House floor. And then, unfortunately, the school shooting happened in Florida, and we started to get a lot more desire in both the House and the Senate to do something more for our school districts to make sure that students and teachers feel safe when they go to school. And so we were able to, just this week, add $10 million of funding to my bill. And it does not go to pay salaries for these individuals. I wish I could say we were going to pay all of their salaries. We can't do that with $10 million a position, as you probably will realize. It costs a good amount of money because it is a very specially trained individual. But what we can do as a state is it's a grant program, one-time grant program that schools can apply for to help pay for the SRO training. And so if an individual goes through this training, it costs about $500. So that's something the school districts, the townships, the cities won't have to pay for. They can apply for a grant through the state to pay for that training. They can apply for training for school safety measures like ALICE training or other active shooter training. And so if they want to be able to offer that training, they can apply for a grant to cover that as well. The piece I think I'm happiest about, most excited about, other than the SRO piece, is we're allowing them to apply for funding to help teachers identify students with mental health issues. So these things don't happen out of the blue. There's a lot of warning signs. This will allow teachers and faculty to apply for funding to go through very specialized training to help identify students that are in crisis before a situation like this happens. And so again, I think this is extremely timely. We have realized as a state that this is a direction a lot of our school districts want to move in. Unfortunately, not every community is welcoming and as supportive as Chester is. And so we're fortunate to be this far into the conversation and to be having this conversation, because a lot of places they just can't get there. They can't afford it. They don't want to have the talk yet. So we as a state have decided we need to figure out how we can help them get there. Again, we can't pay for the salaries yet. I'm hoping one day we'll be able to get there to assist with some of that. But right now we're doing everything we can to help school districts get where they need to go and make sure that they can get this individual in place if that's what they want. And so I think it's great. I think it's absolutely fabulous that this is something we're looking at doing. I can't say how much I support this. I support this so very much. I'm appreciative of everything you're doing to make this a reality. And thank you for inviting me to be here to help you.
Thanks. Okay, Greg. So who will be the school resource officer? So an experienced full-time Chester Township police officer. And again, you see the certifications and how I talked already about when school is in session, or if that officer should call off. When school is not in session, the benefit for the police department is we are understaffed, right? The police department is significantly understaffed on the road. We run a 2-man minimum shift coverage. We should be at 3. And what this officer in the summer months or when the school's on long breaks, he's going to be able to go out on the road and supplement and be that third car during our peak time. So the benefit of having it as a full-time officer is time at the school, handling the reports and incidents, working with the kids, but then when school is not in session, working with the department. So that is that. Craig, go ahead. So when would this begin and what will it cost? So this is a big reason of why I went to see Dr. Marquardt, what we'll talk about here. We've been looking to start this July 1st of this year, and that is to get ready for the 2018-19 school year. So if I was to hire in an officer, and again, these are just rough numbers, certainly I've got to sit with Mr. Richter, should the board approve entering into this, and finalize some numbers, but that the $86,462.24, that's a new officer coming in the door, making our lowest payment and benefits. So that's roughly what he would cost. What I went to Dr. Marquardt with is splitting the cost of this officer 50-50, right down the middle. He received that very well and gave me a favorable response, which is why you see that number split in half there at $43,000 a year. Again, this isn't a one-year thing. It's like we'll do it this year, but we're not doing it next year. And what's important for the board to understand for this year's budget, if we start at July 1st, we're only talking 6 months, so that number again splits in half. So that $43,000 might otherwise be, 21 and change, $1,000 to get through 2018. So we would budget then for a full year in 19. So that's where you'll see that number there with the 2018 share. So then Russell Township, right? So I don't want to lose sight of Russell, because if we have a drill there, if we have a call there, if we have anything going on, Tim and his staff are there. So Russell Township, it's important to them that we keep them involved. They are involved. And right away, Tim went to his board of trustees, and pending our board deciding to move forward with this in the school board, Russell Township is prepared to donate a cruiser so that the school resource officer would have a cruiser available. So should he be at the building, and we would add to that through time by putting an MDT in that car, other equipment he may need in the buildings, one thing or another. It's endless, but it's important that we show the support that both communities and the school have for one another, and that's why I asked them all here today. So Craig, go ahead. So you see it. At the end of the day, this is what we're all here for, right? It's to keep our children safe. I can't think of a better thing. It was one of the first things I did when I got hired. When I very first got hired, the first thing I asked to go to was their school to teach. So that was way back when. We won't talk about how long ago. Now here we are. We should have had the school resource officer in the building long ago. I, like Sarah, and certainly Tim and Dr. Marquardt and his entire staff are very supportive of this. And I'm going to be asking the board to really consider doing this. I think it's past time. That day is not today, because our proposal moving forward here is I wanted to get this out and have some talk and some conversation about it. Dr. Marquardt and I will be meeting with the school board on Monday, 23rd, and presenting to them, and then that gives the two board's a chance to talk a little bit. I'd be looking to come back to the board the meeting of the 26th, possibly proposing a motion to move forward with this so that we can start taking steps towards getting ready for the school year. Dr. Marquardt, I wanted to also offer you the opportunity to say a few words, if you wanted, about the program.
Well, sure. I'm not really prepared, but as you know, if you know me, I can talk a lot about a lot of different stuff. So I guess I just really want to begin by saying how grateful I am to the first responders from Chester Township and from Russell Township, because I could not ask for better services. And hats off to the road crew also, because I call you frequently early in the morning to find out the conditions of the roads. So thank you very much for your support as well. When I first came to West Geauga, it's been 3 years ago now, one of the questions asked of me was, how comfortable are you with a police presence in the schools? And I said, how much can you be there? And from that point on, I think the relationship has really just blossomed for us. The officers, when they're at our schools, aren't there in a reactive sense. They're there in a proactive sense. They're there in the morning when our kids come to school. They're there in the evenings when our kids leave. They're at events at night that take place in the schools. So they become more than security people. They've become friends and they've become colleagues almost with us in an unofficial capacity, I guess you'd say. And having a resource officer employed through the police department working with us in the schools would be just a way to solidify and to strengthen that relationship. It would be to formalize it in some way. But I know that whenever this topic has been broached with the school board or with staff in the schools, all we get is positive responses. People love the relationship that we have with the police departments in both cases, in both Chester and in Russell. And we would very much welcome the opportunity to have a resource officer who is dedicated to the schools. And as you say, it's not just the West G public schools, it's the schools of our community. Because what greater resource do we have than our kids, and what greater treasure do we have that we need to protect than our students? And a resource officer would help us to educate our kids in the responsibilities associated with good citizenship, and it would also protect our kids from anybody, either an internal threat or an external threat who wanted to harm them. So I think it's money well spent. I think it's money that we really as a community need to be able to say is money that's not just a luxury, it's a necessity. And I'd be proud to partner with the two townships in putting something like this together. We'd be grateful participants. So I'm not trying to preempt my board in saying that, but I do want to echo what Chief Purchase just said, that there is support for this partnership moving forward, I think, amongst all parties, from judging from those with whom I've spoken. So thank you for the time. Thank you for inviting me. Sean Whalen's here with me tonight, too. Sean's Director of Operations and Technology and Operations in West Geauga Schools, and as such, Sean plays a really key role in updating our security plans and hosting the meetings that you referenced that we have quarterly to discuss situations that might be enhanced and improved in our schools as they relate to school safety. So Sean joined me here tonight also in his capacity. So thank you very much for extending the invitation to us, and we're honored to be here.
Thank you. So I just have a couple last things, and if the board would have any questions, is that we've also done a lot of legwork already. So a job description has already been created. It's been reviewed by legal. Dr. Marquardt and I think I've bounced it back and forth 6 times, making corrections, changes. I think we got that where we like it right away. The Ohio School Resource Officers Association even provides an agreement, a memorandum of understanding, if you will, to be used between the municipality and the school. I have that already prepared because many school districts are doing just what we're doing. They're partnering with the community to split the cost and get that officer in the building. So a lot of these things are there, ready and waiting for us. I've also met with all of the schools. So I went and sat with the principal of St. Anselm's, and I sat with Tony Warner from Hawken to talk about what we're doing. And if we have that officer in that building, then that makes my road cars more accessible to them. And, and in their buildings more, and they, different use of our part-time officers during the day. This is really bigger than what it seems to make sure that we are, taking care of our children. And why the high school is because the high school and most of those incidents that I talked about are where those incidents are happening, right? So that's why that presence is there first and foremost. But again, by occupying that building, the road officers have more time to spend in the other buildings, and certainly a part-time officer coming in can supplement and helping the school resource officer do those things. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of work has gone into this already, and with that, I would certainly, Tim, do you have anything you'd like to add or say?
No. If any of us remember when Ronnie Cucciarelli, I can't pronounce his name, I called him Bear. If you remember Bear, and when you have that resource officer in the school, and that was at a different society, just a different time back then. We didn't have some of the things we have going on today. But I can remember, I know you can remember, you would call, all right, what kid wasn't in school today, what kid wasn't in school today, and you knew exactly where everybody was. And it just took on a whole different meaning when you had that officer in the school. It really did. The kids would go to him and relay information to him that he formed a trust with them. I think you're going to see that more today, even so. When we have incidents in the school, usually it's one of the students going to the staff at the school that they see something that's not right. I'm sorry about this poll, but they see things that aren't right, and they do go to the staff. You're seeing the kids, when they see something is wrong, they will go to the staff now because of the violence we're seeing in the school. We just had one with a 14-year-old girl last month, or the month before, and we're seeing this stuff. I think it's great that we're being proactive instead of reactive, and we're going to support everything. I don't know what financially we can do. I don't know what that formula might be, but we're there, okay?
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. So with that, any questions from the board or certainly the audience?
I know Representative Latourette, you just in the some of the stuff that your office had sent to me, you talked about a memorandum of understanding. Have we talked about that yet or been drafting one? Or is there a template that we should be following to make sure all items are addressed so they don't become issues at a later
So
point
the
in
way
time?
our bill is written, we only require that one happen. So the fact that they're already having that conversation is great. We don't require what it says. That's left up to the school district and the department. But we would require moving forward that every sheriff's department or police department enter into a memorandum of understanding with the school district. So I think it's great that they're already doing that.
And that's the one that I mentioned that they provide already, and it becomes a template for you to kind of start to move and change names and everything. So that document is fully prepared and ready to be looked at as well.
And of those service calls, which was an interesting statistic, at the high school, what's typically the top one or two reasons for response?
You know, it really depends. I don't know that there would be a top one or two because you can see how much time, most recently, everybody knows what happened when social media got out of control, right? And everybody thought, for sure, there's an active shooter in the building and we shut it down. But we stay there because what we're also doing is, Dr. Marquardt stood right next to me in that hallway, right, as kids were lining up to leave of their own accord. And the rest, one mom left and brought her kids back when she realized nothing was going to make them get out of the car and go back to school. Meaning, we're there for just a myriad of different reasons. And it could be that. It could be a truancy issue. It could be, maybe we're bringing the dogs in the building. Maybe we're, because we do that quite often at the high school and middle school with the help of various departments. So, we literally can take harassment reports there. We can take assault report. I mean, it's just really anything. But what I was assuring you is that it's not a minor or padded number either, meaning, if we did that, Tim and I would have, if we gave a call for every time we're at the schools, we would have thousands in the course of a year with all the times we're there. So,
just thinking from a statistic, if you look, if there are top priorities, then maybe that's where some of the SRO could focus, if we go forward with this, focus on his or her efforts in those general areas to try to...
Well, the two things we would tell you right away is that social media and at the middle school, sexting, right? Pictures, taking pictures of oneself, that is an issue. And that is one where that officer can help with. At the high school, it starts to change, but it's still social media. It's understanding the danger when you post things that you don't know and rumors. It's getting right information to people. It's not overreacting until you have the right... So, social media would be I think we could all, four of us agree that would be the first area that officer has to be involved with education. So,
Anything else?
Can you go through your timeline again when you need approval and decision made?
So we would like to have the officer designated as a school resource officer by July 1st. So because there's training that we have reserved a spot in for and again, this is all pending board approval in August or right before school year would start. So for us, this conversation with the school board will happen on the 23rd. I would look to come back to the board on the 26th, at least to get a motion that we're pursuing this. That gives the boards, both boards, an opportunity to talk with each other if necessary. Go back to the school board, ask them for a motion to support this in agreement. Again, the memorandum of understanding goes to legal, and it is my understanding that legal representation for the school is the same as it is for Chester Township. So we'd want to, I think Sheila mentioned that we might have somebody else from the prosecutor's office look at that as well. But a couple moving pieces to get done there, and what that allows me to do is get a person hired, get them trained, get them on the road so that the transition is seamless. And it wouldn't be a new officer that's hired that would go into the school. It would be an officer from within, if approved, would go to the school, and then the new officer would fill the void on the department. So a lot to happen in a short period of time, but we've got a great deal of it done, and we're certainly ready to go.
I think our chances with Representative Latrette living in Chester Township for the grant for the training are probably pretty good.
Heyo!
I can't live here.
So anyway, thank you for your time and certainly letting us do this.
How long to get the vehicle set up?
So Tim actually has a vehicle that, Chief Carroll actually has a vehicle that is a used vehicle, but he's got it set up. So for us, it's maybe changing the markings. You saw the giant West G in the back of those slides. We're looking at something like that on the door, and a school resource officer right underneath. So it's not specific to Chester or Russell because we're together in this. And that car would be ready to go up on the road, and it would just be a matter of adding some other equipment to it.
Anything else from the audience? All right, thank you, Chief. And
thanks, guys.
Mark Ward and Carol.
Thank you.
Are you adventure ready? Geauga Park District is your family's place for free summer fun. Biking, kayaking, fishing, hiking, camping, and exploring with naturalists for every age and ability. Plan a visit today at geaugaparkdistrict.org.